This video contains full spoilers for the both manga and book series of the Saga of Darren Chan / the Cirque du Freak series. Hello and welcome back to Blurbal Reasoning Cirque du Freak Manga Omnibus Edition, except I'm not doing it via Omnibus Volume anymore, I'm just going to do it by normal volume. So this is for Volume 3 of Cirque du Freak, which adapts the novel Tunnels of Blood by Darren Chan. If you're wondering what do I mean by welcome back, it was like 2 years ago I did the first one of these, and it covers both, like I say, volume 1 and 2, which were collected in the omnibus. I have only just gotten around to collecting the rest of the manga omnibus volumes, and I am so thrilled to have them in my possession. So extremely quick background detail, if you do not already know, I grew up on these young adult novels, and I was delighted to find out years and years ago that there was manga versions of them, but they weren't really selling anywhere anymore by the time I had learned about them, and I couldn't find them online anywhere, so that's definitely changed by this point. But when I saw that they were re-releasing them as omnibus editions, I thought I have to get on this train while it's going. So yeah, previously I believe I talked about how I really love this manga adaptation. Most of the characters are depicted as the way I imagined them, and if not, the designs of the characters usually are better than what I had imagined in my head. There are the occasional ones where I'm like, oh, I don't love the design of RV, you know, that kind of thing, but for the most part, I prefer the designs of Takahiro Arai in his adaptation. And that doesn't stop here. I never imagined Merloff to be looking the way he does, but, you know, I always imagined him to be more skinny. I don't know if he's described that way in the book. I think he is described as being overweight in the book, actually, because he's supposed to be like this, you know, overfed, giant bag of blood kind of a man. He's a glutton, is the word I was looking for. But, you know, I don't know if anyone else reads books this way, but I usually take someone's personality and invent an appearance of them over what the book tells me they look like. Also, I've always pronounced him Merloff, or Merloch. Yeah, he's got a weird name. I think he's supposed to be pronounced like Merlot, like the wine, but spelt differently, but it's been too long. I'm not going to be able to swap back, I'm afraid. So yeah, Tunnels of Blood. This is the book / volume where we learn about the Vampanese, and it's also kind of the one where you can really start to see Darren Chan fleshing out the vampire world, the vampire lore, because this was originally meant to be a 4-book series, if I remember rightly. And you can kind of tell at this point that it's starting to get bigger, the world's starting to expand in his mind, and so we learn about the vampire generals, the vampire princes, we learn about the Vampanese, the difference between vampires and Vampanese, and also this book does a really solid job of solidifying Mr. Crepsley as he's definitely not evil, dudes. And Mr. Crepsley is easily the strongest character in the entire series. I think this adaptation only helps that. I really love Mr. Crepsley's design, and the way Takahiro Arai draws him is so good. Like his especially like in the final scenes of the book. Okay, so let's talk about additional scenes. One of the problems I had with the adaptation of The Vampire's Assistant was that certain scenes got cut from the book, and while the manga volume of the book is always going to feel a little bit more faster paced than the book itself, just because of the nature of the adaptation, The Vampire's Assistant adaptation definitely felt too fast paced because it cut out some scenes of, you know, Darren and Sam exploring the train yard when Darren was feeling woozy and Darren almost dying and Sam saving his life, so that when Darren goes to ask if Sam can join the Cirque, it's more out of a naivete than it is out of, like, I'm indebted to Sam. And Takahiro Arai himself has some kind of, like, mangaka's notes in the back of the volume talking about how he was struggling with the adaptation to keep the pacing right, to make it fit the right amount of volumes, and I feel like he definitely succeeded, because I can't think of any scenes in Tunnels of Blood which are missing from the manga adaptation, and in fact I can think of 3 which were added to the story's benefit. So this has now become more of an additive adaptation than a subtractive one, which is delightful, and I hope he can keep that up all the way through. I mean, you know, there's still little things here and there, like the sun lamp joke didn't make it in, but these are like minor details, not like important things. And that was kind of, you know, the spirit of that scene did take place later in the manga in the final added scene. So the added scenes. The first added scene I can think of is Debbie Hemlock giving Darren a ring as a Christmas present, which I think is brilliant. It really adds to this idea of like, obviously it's not an engagement ring, they're kids, but it's almost got that kind of an energy. It's something that I imagine Darren is going to keep with him. I like the idea that Darren is getting these mementos throughout his life that we're going to see as physical manifestations of his past on his character as we go forwards. It's a very visual addition, so that makes sense for the adaptation, because we get less as an adaptation, we get less internal monologue. Although that internal monologue is still there, but we do get less of it. The next added scene is when Darren and Mr. Crepsley are trying to think of how to find and save Ivra, and Darren is despairing and he's thinking, help me, Sam. Sam Grest is hardly mentioned again in this series until I think like Lake of Souls. But here we have this additional Sam Grest scene, and in a very kind of manga style fashion, we go to this kind of like internal world where Darren is talking to Sam and Sam is helping Darren think through the problem. And that's really nice as well. That really binds the events of the entire series together, having this internal monologue between Darren and Sam. It does take the whole taking on Sam's spirit by drinking his blood a little bit more literally than I guess the original works intended, perhaps. Although maybe not, considering what you see in the very final book when Darren gets reincarnated. Spoilers. I mean, I should add a spoiler warning at the start. I'll go do that. You've already heard it. And then the final added scene, I believe Tunnels of Blood as a book ends with them taking Merloff back to the Tunnels of Blood, the sewers, to be buried, to be hidden away. But in this one, we get an added scene of, because Darren's just like, Ivra's going to be so mad, I'm going to have to explain to him why I just, pretended to sacrifice Debbie. Whereas in this version, we actually get a scene of them on a train with Mr. Crepsley. And like I said, we get that scene of Mr. Crepsley gazing wistfully out the window towards the city which he was raised in, which I absolutely adore, because for anyone who's read the Larton Crepsley prequel novels, you should go and read them. They are brilliant. I love that Mr. Crepsley is humanized outside. I mean, humanized, he's a vampire, but you know what I mean? He's humanized as a character outside of just being Darren's mentor, even at this early stage in the story. And it's an important reminder as to why they were there doing what they were doing as well. They were there because it was Mr. Crepsley's home city that he wanted to defend from an evil, or I guess, depending on who you ask, if you ask me, evil murderer going on a killing spree. And like I said, we have the whole sun lamp joke kind of, not there in the way that it is in the book, but Darren Shan gives Mr. Crepsley a pair of sunglasses, and we also see Darren give Ivra his CD player as a present, which again really ties the narrative together. These are scenes which I think should have been in the final book, to be honest. So yeah, overall I'm just really happy with Volume 3 of Cirque du Freak as a adaptation of Tunnels of Blood, the young adult novel. It's so good. As I've previously stated, of course, the nature of it being a visual adaptation of a novel, even a short novel, does make it feel a little bit faster in terms of pacing just by its very nature. And while Debbie Hemlock made her moves pretty quickly in the original novel, based on, oh, Darren, holding the door open for me, I don't want to think you're flirting with me, I don't want to think you have a crush on me, making Darren blush. That happens, it feels like it happens even faster in the book. It's like 4 panels in and she's already making the moves on him. I'm just like, damn, Debbie, you move fast. Thinking about just the story as a whole outside of it being an adaptation as well, I do think it does a really good job, just like the previous book, of showcasing the childlike innocence, in this case the childlike innocence of, having your first girlfriend or boyfriend and the feelings you have. And I adore the scene where Darren is too scared to kiss Debbie and he's absolutely clueless about her intentions the entire time. And I will say up until that point that pretty much mirrors scenes from my childhood. But then how he decides to climb up the window, and then he's hanging outside the window and you see him kiss her, and from the window. It's so adorable, dude. And then how she kisses him again and he stumbles. Oh, it's so good. And the visual version, the manga version of this scene is really good as well. I love Takahiro Arai's artistic license with certain things, by the way. And I remember the first time I read through, because I did just go back and read through volumes 1 and 2 as well before I started this. I reread those, and I remember the first time reading back through those, I was a little bit on the fence about kind of a visual license of, Steve looking more monstrous as he asks Mr. Crepsley to make him a vampire. But honestly, it's grown on me, and I especially love in fight scenes and stuff where you see Mr. Crepsley being like almost more vampiric, more like using his powers when he's like tracking the fat man. And you kind of see like the way his eyes change and stuff, and when people see Darren as being a vampire and he thinks of himself as being seen as being evil, his eyes kind of inverted to be like black and white. And when you see Darren going through some like emotionally traumatic times, you can really see the stress via how his character is drawn. It's just fantastic stuff all around. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got to say about Volume 3 of Cirque du Freak. Thank you for listening in. I will be back fairly soon with thoughts on Volume 4 of Cirque du Freak, which adapts Vampire Mountain. I read through these really quickly because, it's really easy to read through manga pretty quickly. So what I'll probably do is I will make these videos fairly quickly back to back, but I will schedule them in such a way that they're not all coming out right next to each other. So I guess subscribe for more, and I will see you in whatever I make next.